along with Senator Joe Manchin and actually a total of 60 sponsors, I've filed S1, which is a Keystone approval bill. It's a very simple, straightforward bill. This is legislation that we've seen before in this body. What it does is, under the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, authorizes Congress to approve the Keystone XL Pipeline project. Got this chart here to show you the project. It runs from Hardisty in Alberta, Canada, all the way down to our refineries in Texas along the Gulf Coast. This project will move 830,000 barrels of oil a day. Some of that will be oil from Canada. Some of that will be domestic oil from the Bakken region in Montana and North Dakota. This is part of building the infrastructure so that we can build a comprehensive energy plan for our country. We're producing more and more oil and gas in our country from the shale plays, from places like the Bakken and North Dakota and Montana, the Eagle Ford in Texas, from natural gas from plays like the Barnett and the Marcellus in New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio. And what we're working towards is, some people refer to it as energy independence, but really energy security for our country. Energy security for our country. What does that mean? That means we produce more energy than we consume. Obviously, energy is a global market. The market for energy is a global market. We know that. The market for oil and gas, global market. But the point is, working together with our closest friend and ally, Canada, we can have North American energy security where we produce more energy than we consume. Why is that important? That's important because it's about creating jobs. It's important because it's about economic growth. It's important because it's a national security issue. Why do we continue to rely on oil from the Middle East? Why are we continuing to send dollars to the Middle East where you've got, look at what happened in Paris today with an attack by extremists, by Islamic extremists. One of the ways that we fight back, one of the ways we push back, is we take control of our own energy destiny. And we can do it. We are doing it. Why are gas prices lower today at the pump? Is it because OPEC decided to give us a Christmas present? I don't think so. It's because we're producing far more energy than we ever have before. But to continue to produce that energy, we've got to have the infrastructure to move that energy from where it's produced to where it's consumed. That means pipelines, that means roads, that means rail. For electricity, that means transmission. But we can't have an energy plan for this country that really works without the infrastructure to move that energy safely and effectively. That's what this project is all about. So why are we here talking about it today? Seems like a pretty straightforward proposition. After all, I think there's something like 19 different pipelines that cross the border. In fact, there are millions of miles of pipelines in this country. Here's a map of just some of them. We have millions of miles of pipeline in this country. A lot of them you see crossing the border. So why are we standing here today talking about another pipeline project? Because for the past 6 years, the administration has held this project up. They keep saying there's a process. Matter of fact, Josh Ernst just yesterday said, oh, well, we've got a process. Congress shouldn't intervene in the Keystone XL Pipeline approval issue because there's a process. Really, Mr. President, there's a process? Let's see, the TransCanada company filed application to build the Keystone XL Pipeline in September of 2008. September of 2008. Now, if you do the math, that's more than 6 years ago. More than 6 years ago. And there's a process somehow to get to a conclusion? So that company, which has invested hundreds of millions already, wants to build an ultimately $8.9 million project that'll move 830,000 barrels of oil a day. And here they are 6 years later, still waiting for approval. And that's why today we are asking Congress to step forward and do what the American people want. Keystone is not a new issue. The American people understand this issue. Poll after poll shows the American people, by a margin of about 70% to 20-some%, support this project. Who do we work for, Mr. President? Who do we work for? We work for the people of this great country. And 70% of the people of this great country say approve the project. After 6 long years where all of the requirements have been met, approve the project. But the president, of course, continues to hold it up and even yesterday issued a veto threat. Why? Why is he wanting to threaten a project, to threaten veto on a project that 70% of the American people support? Well, it's really hard to understand, isn't it? Because every time an objection comes up, we've worked to address that objection. When there was objection on the route, the company rerouted. So the president says, well, it's an environmental concern. He says, well, it's an environmental concern. Really? An environmental concern. This is what his own study found. After 6 years of study, the State Department, in multiple environmental impact statements, 3 draft statements and 2 final environmental impact statements, this is what they found. No significant environmental impact. According to the U.S. State Department environmental impact statements. That's not something I did. That's not something the company did. That's something that the Obama administration did repeatedly and came to the same conclusion: no significant environmental impact. In fact, if you don't build the pipeline, you have to move that oil with 1,400 rail cars a day. Now, Canada is going to produce the energy. North Dakota, Montana, other states are going to continue to produce the energy. So that energy is going to move. The question is how and where. If we can't build the pipeline, then it's got to go by rail car. So do we really want 1,400 rail cars a day moving that product around, or do we want it to move more safely, more cost effectively, with better environmental stewardship through a pipeline? Common sense. And then this idea that somehow, well, Canada's not going to produce that oil if they don't have a pipeline. Wrong. Wrong. They'll move it by rail, and they'll build other pipelines. Here are several that are already in the planning stages. They'll move it to the East Coast for refineries they have there, or they'll send it west, and it'll go to China. Now, does that make sense? Well, it doesn't make sense to the American public, which is why the American public wants to work with Canada, as well as produce energy in our country, to become energy secure. The idea that we would say no to our closest friend and ally, Canada. We're not going to work with you. We're going to continue to buy oil from the Middle East, and we're going to have you send your oil to China. Makes no sense to the American people. And it shouldn't. It shouldn't. That's why they overwhelmingly support this project. So that here we are. We're starting the new Congress. I think very clearly in the last election, the people said, we support this project, and you saw it time after time with candidate after candidate who supported this project that won their elections. But on an even bigger issue, an even bigger message, the people of this great country said, we want the Congress to work together in a bipartisan way to get things done. We want the Congress to work together in a bipartisan way to get things done. So here we have legislation that has passed the House repeatedly with bipartisan majority. Here we have legislation that has bipartisan support in this body. Here we have legislation that the American people overwhelmingly support after clearly giving the message in the last election that they want us working together to get work done, and the president issues a veto message right out of the gates? Why? For whom? Who's he working for? So it is incumbent upon us to work together in a bipartisan way to get this legislation passed. And the way we're approaching it, and I see that my good friend and colleague from the great state of West Virginia is here. I want to thank and turn to him, but I want to do it in the form of a question. It was my very clear sense from the last election, and I think the very clear sense that we all got from the last election, is that they want to see Congress working together in a bipartisan way in an open process to get the important work of this country done. So with this legislation, it's not just that it's about important energy infrastructure, it's also that we want to return to regular order in this body, offer an open amendment process, allow people to bring forward their amendments, offer those amendments, debate them, and get a vote on those amendments. And if they have amendments that can add and improve this legislation, great, great. And let's have that process, let's have that debate, let's have those votes. Let's make this bill as good as we can possibly make it. And then the president needs to work with us. The president needs to meet us halfway and get this done for the American people. So I'd like to turn to my good colleague from the great state of West Virginia and say, aren't we doing all we can here to try to make sure that we're approaching this in a bipartisan way with an open, transparent process to try to build support for this legislation?
You're absolutely correct, and I thank you for this opportunity not only to work with you, but also to bring the facts to the floor. We've heard many times, we're all entitled to our own opinion. We're just not entitled to our own facts. So if you start looking at what we are consuming today in America, at last count, 7 million barrels of oil is purchased, crude is purchased every day in America from other countries. 7 million barrels of crude a day. So this line would possibly furnish 830,000 barrels of that dependency that we have. Let's look and see where it comes from right now. 2.5 million barrels we're already purchasing from Canada. Our best, greatest ally we could possibly have, the best trading partner, and number one trading partner that 35 of the 50 states have. So it's not an unknown there. But let's look where we're purchasing some of the rest of the oil. We purchase 755,000 barrels a day from Venezuela. 755 of heavy crude from Venezuela. And let's look at Venezuela, where it's an authoritarian regime. It impoverishes its citizens, it violates their human rights. It shows its willingness to put down political protest with horrific violence. We also purchase 1.3 million barrels a day from Saudi Arabia. We all have our concerns about Saudi Arabia, and a lot of the money that we follow goes into the wrong hands. 42,000 barrels a day from Russia. From Russia. And we know what their intent and what they've been doing with their energy policies. And their regime has invaded its neighbors, armed pro-Russian separatists in Ukraine. So when you start looking at what we're doing, these are the facts. This is not just hearsay, and it's not just rumors. These are facts. We purchased 7 million. And I've said, when I first was approached by this 4 years ago when I came to the Senate, they said, what do you think about the Keystone Pipeline that'll be bringing oil from Canada into America? I said, where I come from in West Virginia, it's pretty common sense. We'd rather buy from our friends than our enemies. I'd rather support my friends, my allies, my trading partners, more so than I would the enemies who use anything I buy from them and the money that they receive from that product that I buy from them and use it against me. It's pretty common sense. It's not real complicated. Now, everybody's trying to really make this complicated. Also, they talk about exports. We just had a caucus talking about the different, what would happen to the oil, Senator, and I know you've been watching this very closely. But they said the Keystone Pipeline will strictly be just an avenue and a vehicle for exporting this oil out. They're just going to use America to bring that oil through. Well, we checked into that a little bit further. That's not true. And I think even the Washington Post gave it 3 Pinocchios. It says untrue. We found out basically the crude oil from Canada is expected to be mixed with the domestic oil from the Balkans, from your region, North Dakota. And the Canadian oil, it's a heavier crude, like Venezuelan oil. It'll be mixed with the light crude from the Balkans, which enables it to flow much easier and be produced. Once it commingles, this oil is basically American oil. It lives and dies and basically is marketed with the policies of the United States of America. And our policy is not to export crude oil. So I don't know why people are using this argument and scaring people that we're getting no benefit. And then we talked about the jobs. And they said, well, there's not that many jobs. Well, in West Virginia, you give us 42,000 jobs. We'll be very appreciative. Well, thank you. And these are all high-paying jobs. And they said, well, they're only contractual. They're only contract jobs. But yet I hear everybody talking, Republicans, Democrats, about building roads and building bridges. Those are also seasonal types of jobs. Those are all contracting jobs. They're not permanent jobs, but we're tickled to death to get them. And that's the whole trade union. All the unions that I know of are supportive of this piece of legislation. Every working man that we keep talking about and woman who supports themselves and their family supports this legislation. And while we're running in such a roadblock, I have no idea. And then we put the map up, and I think, Senator, you have the map there, but the other map we had, I said, you know, when I first heard about this pipeline, I thought it was an anomaly. We just didn't have many pipelines in America. Then we put this map up. This is what we have in America today. So this is not foreign to any of us. In any state, we have pipelines, many in West Virginia and all through this country. So then you look at public support. You think, here we are, Democrats and Republicans, and we look at the polls and we live and die by the polls, they tell us, or we should. But the bottom line is that if you do believe in the polls, this has been a consistent poll. It has not varied. For over 5 years, you have not seen the numbers fluctuate that much. Overwhelmingly, you've got Americans in all aspects of the political arena. Whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, overwhelmingly support this pipeline. So I cannot see the objections to it. I was very disappointed when the president said he would veto it, or the White House. Once we said we would go through this process. And I think you and I talked about it, Senator, and we thought it's going to be an open process. I was encouraged by my colleagues on the Democrat side who have some good amendments, I believe, that should be considered, and I believe would pass and enhance the bill. And we only need four more senators on my side of the aisle that can see the benefit of a good bill, a good process with good amendments to strengthen this bill to put us in a position to make it veto-proof. That should be our goal. So basically, we shouldn't be deterred by the White House or the President saying already that they're going to veto this bill. Let's see if we can make this bill so good and that when we are finished with this product and this process 2 or 3 weeks from now, that we'll have a product that basically we're all proud of, that the American people are proud of and will support, and maybe, just maybe, the White House will change its mind. I'm hopeful for that. So I appreciate all the effort and work, and we're working very well together. We have, I think, the last count we had 9 Democrats working with our Republican colleagues. That puts us at 63. I'm hopeful to get 4 more at least that'll look at the virtues of this and basically the assets and what it'll do for our country. My main goal is this: energy independence makes us a secured, protected nation. Anytime that we do not have to go and depend on oil coming from other parts of the world and the resources that we give them when we purchase their product, and they use those resources against us time after time again, we can see now with the oil prices dipping, the benefits that the consumers in America receive, the strength it makes our country. And I am so thankful for that we are getting a break here, and I think we can continue to make that happen for many years to come if we're able to be smart strategically what we do today. I think you spoke about the environment too. You might want to touch on that again. But most of this oil is being produced now, some way or another, and it's also getting transported in different ways and means. And the bottom line is that no significant environmental impact, and I think the State Department's even done 5 studies that shows that to be true. So, and I said also, 2.5 million barrels a day is being purchased from Canada today. Refineries in Illinois are now refining this product they say that we shouldn't do. We've been doing it for quite some time. We're using this product, and with technology, we're using it better. And it has helped us be more independent of foreign oil. That's the number one thing, the security of my nation. being American and West Virginians wanting the security of our nation is the first and foremost thing that we support. That's why I think you see a tremendous amount of people from the Mountain State, Senator, that support this piece of legislation. We're going to work diligently. We have a long way to go here, but I think the facts are on our side. We are all entitled to our opinion, but we can't change the facts, sir.
I'd like to thank the senator from West Virginia, and I want to thank him not only for his support on this project, but for his willingness to work hard, to work together, to find bipartisan solutions, whether it's this legislation or other legislation. That is what it is incumbent upon us to do, and it is not easy. But we've got to be willing to engage in the hard work it takes to get this legislation, to get these solutions in place for the American people. And so I, again, want to thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to continuing to work with you and our colleagues on both sides of the aisle to come to good solutions. That's what this effort is all about. And I want to turn to the senator from the state of Montana. The pipeline project goes right through his state. Here's somebody who has dealt with the issue on the House side of Congress and who's got the project in his home state. So he's talking on behalf of people where the pipeline is right there. And I'd like to turn to him and say, what are the people in Montana saying? I mean, you know, it's fine for somebody far removed from a project to say, well, you know, I'm okay or I'm not okay with it. But how about the people that are right there on the site? They're directly affected. Tell us, what's the sense in your home state? What are you hearing when you talk to people?
Well, Mr. President, I applaud, first of all, the senator from North Dakota for his leadership on this most important issue and his commitment to making it a priority for this Senate as the first bill introduced into this Senate. And I also want to applaud the senator from West Virginia. One example, as we sit in this chamber today, Republicans and Democrats discussing and supporting the Keystone XL Pipeline. And I want to reiterate many of the comments expressed by my colleagues and convey the importance of this pipeline because, as the senator from North Dakota mentioned, it showed on his map, the very first state the Keystone Pipeline enters as it comes from Canada is the state of Montana. And let me tell you something, it's not just a pipeline, this is also changing the way of life and an economic stimulus for our great state. I spent a lot of time traveling around the state in my pickup. And as I drive around eastern Montana where the Keystone Pipeline will travel, we recognize this is a lifeline for many of our rural communities. In fact, Circle, Montana. Now, Circle, Montana is a small town of around 600 people. It's located in Macomb County, and it's one of 6 Montana counties that the Keystone XL Pipeline will route through. Now, Circle, like a lot of small communities in Montana, has experienced the same economic and population declines that towns have faced in recent years. In fact, the county has significant infrastructure needs that have gone unresolved in the wake of a shrinking tax base. Now, for towns like Circle, the Keystone XL Pipeline isn't just about energy. It represents economic opportunity and hope for the future. You see, Macomb County alone would see $18 million in property tax revenues from the Keystone Pipeline construction, and that's just in the pipeline's first year of operation. Now, that's money for neighborhoods, it's for roads, not to mention the influx of jobs for the area. Now, another $45 million would be distributed among 5 other Montana counties, and $16 million would go to Montana's schools and university systems. You see, the Keystone XL Pipeline means lower energy costs for Montana families, for our senior citizens, and for small businesses. In Glasgow, Montana, I remember traveling in my pickup into Glasgow, and I met with the Norval Electric Co-op. They told me that the Keystone Pipeline is approved, that they will hold electric rates flat for their customers for the next 10 years. That's several thousand Montana families up in the northeast part of our state. The reason for that is because they will supply the electricity to the pump stations on the Keystone Pipeline. If the Keystone Pipeline is not approved, those ratepayers will see an approximate 40% increase in their utility rates over the next 10 years. That's a potential increase of about $480 per year for the average household in Montana. Now, as the senator from North Dakota mentioned, 100,000 barrels a day of the oil traveling through the Keystone Pipeline will be Montana and North Dakota oil. That supports the Bakken Formation. We're seeing this revolution in hydraulic fracturing, what it's creating now in lower gas prices at the pump today. Montanans know this pipeline isn't just a lofty idea or some kind of DC-based rhetoric. It is hope for the people of my state. It's a tangible result and a solution that Montanans deserve. And I got to tell you, that's why it's so disappointing that once again we're seeing the president and some Senate Democrats playing political games and perpetuating the 6 years of gridlock that have held back this job-creating project. And rather than putting the American people first, the president has threatened to refuse the people of Montana their right to determine their economic future. You know, it took the Canadians just 7 months to approve their end of the Keystone Pipeline. It's taken this president more than 6 years. That's 6 years without the hundreds of good-paying jobs that be created in Montana and thousands more across the nation. That's 6 years without millions of dollars in critical revenue for Montana's schools, for infrastructure, for teachers. That's 6 years without the answers and action that Montanans deserve. You know, I think the pipeline checks every box of common sense. It's environmentally sound, it creates jobs, it's economic opportunity, and it's going to help us towards North American energy independence. So the question, why are we still waiting? The people of Montana, the people of this country have said they've had enough. And that's why we're here today speaking out in support of this important project. I'm proud that the Senate is taking steps to move forward the Keystone XL Pipeline, and the House, I know, intends to do the same shortly. President Obama can continue to obstruct progress on American jobs and on American energy independence, but the American people have sent a strong message that they are ready to remove any roadblocks that President Obama intends to put in the way. The time for partisanship, the time for political games is over. It is time this Congress and this government gets to work for the American people and start getting results for this country. The polls are clear. 67% of the American people want the Keystone Pipeline approved. 75% of Montanans want the Keystone Pipeline approved. Prior to serving in Congress, I spent 28 years in the private sector. We're focused on getting results in the real world. It seems like only in D.C. are we outside of the real world here of doing something and getting results on behalf of the American people. And that starts with approving the Keystone XL Pipeline. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back to the Senator from North Dakota.
I'd like to thank the Senator from Montana. Again, you're hearing from somebody who's there, who's talking to the people, where this project is going to be located, one of the states that it passes through. And so I thank him for his perspective and for his hard work and commend him for being here and for his continued efforts, not only to work with our caucus, but to reach out to the Democrat caucus as well and find common ground on this important issue. And something that the senator from West Virginia said just a minute ago, and that's let's focus on the facts. Let's focus on the facts. Because I think the more understanding we create as to what the facts are, this gets done on the merits. And so I want to turn to the senator from Wyoming, somebody who's got long experience with energy, somebody who comes from an energy state, a state that produces a variety of sources of energy, and pose the same question to him. And in terms of focusing on the facts, whether it's the environmental aspect, whether it's the jobs, whether it's making our country energy secure, talk to us a little bit about the importance of this kind of vital infrastructure, projects like Keystone for our country.
Mr. President, first let me thank and congratulate the senator from North Dakota for his dogged determination in fighting for these American jobs, for energy security for our country. So I'm so grateful that his hard work, he has really just been tenacious in his fight to get this bill past the Senate and to the President's desk. I also want to congratulate my friend and colleague from Montana. Last fall, the American people elected 12 new Republican senators to serve in this body. He is one of them. I've had an opportunity to travel with him in Montana, great background. He is creative. He is innovative. He is energetic. He is going to do a tremendous job, not just for his state in the Rocky Mountain West, but for the entire United States as a member of the Senate. He just took his oath yesterday, and we were able to hear from him today, and he's going to be a remarkable addition to this body. Mr. President, I know that all of these dozen new Republican senators are as eager as the rest of us in the new Republican majority to start fulfilling our obligation to the people that we represent. Americans elected a Republican Congress because they wanted to change. They wanted to change the direction that President Obama and Democrats have taken the country. Under the Democrat leadership of the past several years, the Senate was a place of dysfunction and gridlock. More than 40 jobs bills passed by the House of Representatives in the last Congress never even came up for a vote in the United States Senate. Many of those bills had overwhelming bipartisan support, just like this one we're debating today. Those days are over. That is a completely unacceptable way to run the United States Senate. All of us here in the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, have been given an opportunity to work together and to get things done. That's what the American people told us on Election Day. It's what they are expecting from us, and I believe it is what they are demanding of us. Now, the poster child for the gridlock and the dysfunction of Washington has been the Keystone XL Pipeline. For more than 6 years, it has been a symbol of out-of-control Washington bureaucracy. The State Department has absolutely refused to do its job and to make any kind of decision on the pipeline's application. The Keystone XL Pipeline has also been a symbol of gridlock in the Senate. A small group of extreme environmentalists with deep pockets has bullied Democrat members of the Senate to block a bill that would move this important jobs project further. According to the latest figures, the Americans' labor force participation rate is woefully low. It is just 62.8%. Are Democrats in this body, are they satisfied with that number? Is the President of the United States, Barack Obama, satisfied with this pathetic level of participation in America's labor force? I can tell you that people in my state, Republicans all around the country, they're not satisfied. That's why we're determined to push job-creating legislation like this Hoeven bill to advance the Keystone XL Pipeline. Now, the President has said there's no benefit to this important infrastructure project. During a press conference last month, President Obama actually claimed that the project is, as he said, not even going to be a nominal benefit, he said, to the United States consumers. Apparently, that's what the President believes. Well, he's wrong. Just ask the Obama administration's own State Department. It says the pipeline would support more than 42,000 jobs. Some of those are construction jobs. Some of them are in the transportation field, the manufacturing field. Includes jobs at warehouses, restaurants, motels along the route. Does President Obama think that a good job that is not even a nominal benefit to America? A country where we get 42,000 jobs by this pipeline? According to the Congressional Research Service, there are already 19 pipelines operating across the U.S. borders. Why is this one that suddenly offers not even a nominal benefit, according to the President? Why does President Obama refuse even to make a decision about whether to approve the pipeline or not? Well, the President has taken a position on this bill. He's taken a position on this bipartisan bill. According to the White House press secretary on Tuesday, said the President will not sign this bill once Congress passes it. The State Department has done one study after another showing the pipeline would create jobs and that it would have no significant environmental impact. Now, President Obama has been downplaying those benefits and threatening to veto the bill. That's not presidential leadership. Now Republicans are going to show the leadership that the American people have been asking for and that they voted for last November. We're going to bring a bill to the floor, force the President finally to do something by putting it on the President's desk. Democrats have been playing politics with this pipeline bill. The Republican majority will now get it done. We're going to allow a vote on this project. We're going to go allow senators to offer amendments. What a unique situation in the United States Senate. We're going to let everyone say which side they're on. This will be a bellwether decision. Are members of the Senate in favor of 42,000 jobs for American workers, or are they in favor of more Washington delay? Democrats will have a chance to make their arguments. The extreme opponents of this project will make misleading claims to try to discount the pipeline's benefits, and they'll try to stoke people's fears. We've seen it all before. At the end of the day, here's what this all comes down to. 4 things. First, the Keystone XL Pipeline will support more than 42,000 jobs in the United States. Second, it will be a private investment of $8 billion, not taxpayer spending, private spending. Third, it will have minimal effect on the environment. And fourth, the pipeline is actually safer than other methods of getting that oil to market. Congress should approve this pipeline and pass this bill, and the President should sign it. The Keystone XL Pipeline is a job creator. It has bipartisan support, and it has been stuck in Washington's bureaucratic gridlock. You know, it's interesting when I listen and think of the President and his comments about jobs and what the impact is going to be, and it makes me think of what the President of the Laborers International Union of North America said in this summer a year ago. And he was scheduled to testify at today's hearing of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, a hearing that now the minority, the Democrat acting leader, Senator Durbin, objected to having yesterday. He objected to just a hearing and a discussion. And it's interesting. There was a press release from the president of the union who was quoted on the subject of the economic benefits associated with the construction of the pipeline. He said, President Obama, seems to dismiss the corresponding economic opportunities that would benefit other laborers, manufacturers, small businesses, and communities throughout Keystone's supply chain. He said, the Washington politics behind the delay of the Keystone XL pipeline are of little concern to those seeking the dignity of a good, high-paying job. We renew our call to the President Obama, to approve this important job-creating project without delay. This is what a job is. It says something about someone's dignity, their identity, their self-worth. People take a lot of personal pride in their work and in their job. And I think we ought to approve it. I'm ready to vote for it. The American people have been clear. They are tired of Washington's gridlock and delay. They are tired of the direction that President Obama had been taking this country. The American voters demanded change. They demanded action. And this Republican Congress is going to deliver just that. So I say to my friend and colleague from North Dakota, and I see that also that the chairman of the Senate Energy Committee has arrived. Thank you both for your leadership on energy in North Dakota, to the senator from North Dakota, former governor there, and thank you specifically also for your leadership to the senior senator from Alaska, the chair of the Energy Committee, and I look forward to working with both of you specifically on this project and on additional issues that will bring American energy security and jobs to our nation.
I'd like to, Mr. President, I'd like to thank the senator from Wyoming for his comments today and for his continued hard work on this important issue. And I look forward to working with him again to get this done for the American people. And I'd like to turn to our leader on the Energy Committee, the chairman of the Energy Committee, the senator from Alaska, certainly somebody that understands energy, another state that produces a huge amount of energy for this country and wants to produce more and can produce more, but only with the infrastructure to do it. And isn't that what we're talking about here today? This country can have more jobs, more economic growth, and more energy that we produce right here at home. But, Senator, don't we need the infrastructure to move that energy as safely and as cost-effectively as possible?
To my friend and colleague from North Dakota, it is all about infrastructure. In Alaska, in my home state, we have boundless supplies of oil, of natural gas. But until we were able to build that 800-mile pipeline across 2 mountain ranges to deliver that oil from Alaska's North Slope to Tidewater in Valdez, that oil didn't do anybody any good. Now that oil pipeline in Alaska is less than half full. And so we're working to try to figure out how we do more as a state to contribute to our nation's energy needs, to allow us as a state to be producing more for the benefit not only of our state but of the nation as well. But yet we are held back by policies that limit us. So it's policies and it's infrastructure. It's absolutely infrastructure. We're trying to move Alaska's natural gas to market as well. But again, if you don't have the infrastructure, it sits. It stays. It doesn't benefit the consumers. It doesn't create the jobs. It doesn't help any of us out. So Keystone truly is about infrastructure. And I thank my colleague from North Dakota for leading on this issue for years now, for reintroducing the legislation. Senate Bill 1, the first bill to be filed in the Senate this year. It will be, Mr. President, among the first bills to pass in this new Congress, and appropriately so. Appropriately so. This is a measure that, again, not only enjoys bipartisan support here in the Senate, it enjoys broad support over in the House, but it enjoys support across our nation for great reason. So you say, why are we where we are? Why are we looking at this situation and saying there's so much frustration going on here? Senator McConnell has promised to allow open and full debate on the Keystone XL Pipeline project, the legislation in front of it. I think we're looking forward to it. As the chairman of the Energy Committee, I'm looking forward to robust debate on the Keystone XL and what it will provide for this country in terms of jobs, in terms of opportunities. But we're all frustrated. We're frustrated by a president's decision, or unwillingness, really, unwillingness to make a decision about this pipeline. 2,301 days and counting since the company seeking to build it submitted an application for this cross-border permit. 2,301 days. That's more than 6 years ago. And then yesterday, the president finally is able to make a decision, apparently. He issues his statement of administration policy, and in his statement, he says that by advancing this measure, it would cut short consideration of important issues. Excuse me, Mr. President. Cut short a process that has been underway for over 6 years? That's just amazing to me. So again, when we talk about decisions, let's get moving with this. Let's get moving with this. The president seems to be advancing some pretty interesting things when it comes to the energy discussion. He was quoted in an interview just this morning. This was an interview with the president in the Detroit News. And he basically told Americans, he says, you know, we're enjoying lower energy prices right now, but you better enjoy them fast because they're not going to last. He said, we've got to be smart about our energy policy. I'm with you there, Mr. President. We do have to be smart about our energy policy. But to think that the suggestion here is just enjoy low prices while they last, take advantage of the sunshine? No, Mr. President, your energy policies need to make sense for today. They need to make sense for the midterm and for the long term. And for the long term and for the short term, we need to make sure that we've got infrastructure that will allow us the energy supply that is so important to this country. It amazes me that we would be so defeatist with this approach. So we've got an opportunity here in this Congress. We had an opportunity this morning in the Energy Committee. We had scheduled a hearing on the Keystone XL Pipeline. We were going to hear testimony on original legislation to approve Keystone XL, as we did last year on a bipartisan basis. But as members in the body know, there was objection to that unanimous consent. We had to cancel, or we had to postpone that hearing. I quite honestly was surprised by it. It would have been nice to know that an objection was coming before we had organized the hearing, before we had invited witnesses, before we had completed all the preparations. So we're going to do our best in the committee to adhere to regular order. I'm hopeful that our colleagues will work with us on that. But I would like to introduce for the record, Mr. President, if I can, some of the testimony that we received from the three witnesses who graciously agreed to participate in our hearing that we had scheduled for this morning. Andrew Black, who is the president and the CEO of the Association of Oil Pipelines, he described pipeline safety issues, the gains that Keystone XL would bring to the American economy in terms of jobs and payrolls. Part of the excerpts from his testimony are as follows. He says, "While there is much controversy associated with the Keystone XL pipeline, the facts are that the pipelines are the safest way to transport crude oil and other energy products. A barrel of crude oil has a better than 99.999% chance of reaching its destination safely by pipeline, safer than any competing transportation mode." A second witness that we had invited was David Molino, who's the legislative director of the Labor's International Union of North America. In his testimony, he explored the positive jobs impact of the pipeline, responded to some environmental concerns. An excerpt from Mr. Molino is, "Regardless of characterizations by the project's opponent, it is indisputable that jobs will be created and supported in the extraction and refining of the oil, as well in the manufacturing and service sectors." And then we also invited Greg Dotson, who's the Vice President for Energy Policy at the Center for American Progress. He submitted his testimony in opposition. We made sure that we had opposition testimony presented as well. He discussed climate change. He responded to the arguments in favor of Keystone. And while he may be an opponent of the pipeline, and as usual, would have been outnumbered by the supporters of the project, I will still submit his written testimony for the record here today. And, Mr. President, I would ask consent that the testimonies of Mr. Black, Mr. Molino, and Mr. Dotson be included as part of the record.
Without objection.
But I do believe, Mr. President, that had we been allowed to hold the hearing this morning, we would have heard very strong bipartisan statements in support of Keystone XL from many members of our committee. The majority of our committee supports this pipeline and is already co-sponsoring this bill. So, Mr. President, I want to close my comments by assuring members of this committee we are in day 2 of this 115th Congress. This is not going to be our only debate on energy legislation over the years. I know that it's been a long 7 years since we have had comprehensive energy legislation. A lot has changed. A lot of people have great ideas to improve and reform our policies, and I welcome those ideas. I'm looking forward to the debate, to advancing these proposals through the Energy Committee. I think we can make a significant progress on supply, on infrastructure, on efficiency, on accountability, and that those areas in particular should be the form or the focus of an energy bill that we would hope to report out. We're going to work hard in this committee. We're planning on legislating. Keystone XL is a natural point for this Congress because it has been delayed for so long. 2,301 days. It's clear that this president is not going to make a decision on this, so the Congress needs to make it instead. So I look forward to coming back to the floor in a couple days when we have Senate Bill 1 officially in front of us. We're going to have good debate on it. I look forward to working with my colleague who has been so aggressive on this issue for so long. His leadership has been key in getting us here, but we need to finish it up. We need to make the connects so that we can move the resource and provide the jobs for this country and for our allies and friends in Canada. And with that, I again thank my friend and look forward to these next couple days and really the next couple weeks where we will have an opportunity to put this before the American people here on the floor of the United States Senate.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank the Senator from Alaska for her leadership on the Energy Committee, but also for her willingness to work in an open way on these important issues. And I think that across this body, on both sides of the aisle, there should be a deep appreciation for her willingness to bring these bills forward so that we can debate them and we can offer amendments and we can build the kind of energy future for this country that our people so very much want to have. And so, the Senator from Alaska is somebody who really lives and breathes this topic. When we talk energy, somebody that's truly committed to it, but truly committed to an open dialogue on all types of energy and giving everybody an opportunity to weigh in here and build the best energy plan for our country that we possibly can. And so I want to extend my thanks to her and also my appreciation, and likewise say that I really look forward to working with her on this issue, but on so many important energy issues. And I'd like to turn to my colleague from the state of North Dakota and ask her for her perspective on why this project is so important for our country and for the energy future of our country.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I rise to join my colleagues on the other side who represent states who know a little bit about energy, and certainly my colleague from North Dakota who has led this effort from the first day that he arrived in the United States Senate. No big surprise, because we know that you can have as much oil out there, you can know where the reserves are, but if you don't have the infrastructure to move that oil to market, what you do is you drive up prices. And everybody who is looking at what we're looking at right now, I haven't checked today, but oil prices below $40 a barrel. If you don't think that's supply-demand economics 101, you don't understand what's happening. The fact that we have known reserves in places like North Dakota, known reserves in Alaska, we have producible reserves in Canada, we have an opportunity to continue to develop these resources in a way that benefit in an incredible way American consumers. Think about what's happening for the average American family today when they fill up in the pump, and think what that means and how that will ripple through our economy as discretionary income grows. But that is only possible when we have a known supply that is movable, it's transportable, it is in fact capable of reaching its market or reaching the refinery. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about North American crude oil. Now, you're going to hear a lot of stories over this debate about how this crude oil is more dangerous to the environment, how it is different than Bakken crude. Guess what? It is different than Bakken crude, but it's not different from the crude that's refined in the refineries in Texas where we will be displacing crude that is refined from Venezuela, and we are going to be replacing it with crude that is produced in our friends to the north, Canada. And so infrastructure is a huge part. In fact, that's why Secretary Moniz, when he declared the quadrennial energy review, he looked at not just where's the supply and the future of supply of energy, he focused on transportation of energy, because that's a huge part of our challenge today. And as we look at the Keystone XL Pipeline, and we say Keystone XL because a lot of people don't know, we already have a Keystone pipeline. We already have a pipeline that is bringing oil sands from Canada into the United States for refinery. A lot of people don't realize this. This is the second pipeline that will be named Keystone. And it is a pipeline that has been in process for literally a decade, from their planning process to the time that they actually ask for a permit. Now, I'm going to address some of the concerns of some of my colleagues as we hear them, just so that we can kind of lay the groundwork. When you frequently hear the Keystone XL Pipeline will be exported, all of the oil that's coming down will find its way directly into China. Guess what? That gets said all the time. And guess what the Washington Post gave it? 3 Pinocchios. Not true. It's going to get refined. It's going to get refined in the United States of America. It's going to displace Venezuelan crude, and it is going to find its way into the American markets and continue to provide that supply that is in fact today driving down costs. And so let's get rid of that first argument, that this is going to somehow not benefit American consumers, that this is going to somehow find its way, onto a barge immediately upon arrival into the Gulf. So that's the first thing that we need to be talking about, which is let's actually have a fact-based discussion about what this pipeline is. The second argument you will hear is that this somehow will have a huge effect on climate and on climate change. And for those reasons alone, it ought to be rejected. Well, let's take a look at what the experts who have repeatedly looked at this very issue. Because one thing that we know that I think is beyond dispute when you talk to the officials in Canada is that we are going to produce oil from Canada, regardless of whether we build a pipeline. And that oil is going to find its way into the transportation system and, quite honestly, is going to burden our rail transportation system because we haven't figured out how to build a pipeline. So all those people who want to confuse the issue about the pipeline versus the development in Canada of the oil sands, let's separate it. Let's look at what, in fact, is the decision before the United States of America. And that is the decision of whether it's in our national interest to approve a permit for a pipeline. I will say this over and over again as we pursue this debate. This is a pipeline and not a cause. So many people have talked about it, and I think in some ways this process has gotten exaggerated on both sides. I mean, it's going to be the panacea and going to prevent all unemployment, or it's going to be the worst thing, Armageddon for the environment. And you know what? This is a pipeline. This is a transportation system. This is an essential part of the infrastructure to bring an important fossil fuel into our country so that it can be refined and utilized by the American people. And oh, by the way, knowing those reserves are there, knowing that we've got the reserves that we have in the Bakken, knowing that we're developing more and more untraditional sources of supply has driven the price down, has created the situation that we have today that is saving consumers millions and billions of dollars in our country. The second thing I want to say is people say we got to respect the process. I respect process. That's part of what I've done my whole life. I'm a lawyer, and so you hear repeatedly about due process and the need to have due process. But you know what? Occasionally the process is broken. Guess what? 6 years to site a pipeline. We were able to...
The time reserved for the senator from North Dakota has expired.
See for 5 minutes to wrap up the colloquy.
Is there objection? Without objection.
The process, back to the process, when you look at it, 6 years, you know what? We fought World War II and defeated the greatest evil known to mankind, Adolf Hitler, in 4. And we can't site a pipeline in 6. So the process is broken. The other thing you're going to hear is, this is going to somehow disrupt what's happening in Nebraska. I think the senator from North Dakota was absolutely correct as part of this bill in putting a provision in that says all bets are off if Nebraska reverses the decisions that were made in Nebraska. But somehow that's getting forgotten in this debate. And so we're going to have a lot of hours of debate, I think, on Keystone XL Pipeline. We're going to have a lot of amendments. I'm grateful for the opportunity to go back to regular order. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about amendments. But I want so badly that us to have a reasoned and factual-based debate. Not an emotional debate, but a debate that basically puts this pipeline in perspective, and so puts this issue in perspective. And so I want to congratulate my colleague from North Dakota for the success in raising this issue and getting this issue its early debate. I hope that we'll be able to move this along, that we'll be successful in getting enough people to provide that momentum to achieve ready approval. And finally, I want to say why it's so important that we do it now. For those of us who live in the northern tier, we know what a construction season is. And you can't begin to put pipe in the ground in September and October, not without a lot of additional costs, which we've already burdened this pipeline with. And so we need to make this decision. We need to get this decision done yet this spring as early as possible so that plans can be made, so that people can begin their construction season, and we can begin to rationally address the infrastructure need for development of our energy resources in North America. And so with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank my colleague from North Dakota and pick up on an important point she made, and that is the energy we're producing in this country is helping consumers at the pump by bringing down prices. And I'd like to turn to my colleague from Kansas who wants to close this colloquy and address that very point that we're producing more energy. We need the infrastructure to keep doing that to benefit our consumers at the pump.
I thank my colleague, and I want to pay a lot of credit to him for leading this colloquy, and I thank the other distinguished senator from North Dakota for her remarks. Washington Times just today, Jack Gerard, president and CEO of the American Petroleum Institute, said falling oil prices have empowered the United States and weakened OPEC and Russia, underscore Russia, and that increased U.S. production has fundamentally reordered the world's energy markets. This is a national security issue. This is an issue where Russia, I think the break-even point for them is about $110 per barrel, and now it's 48. They never dreamed this would happen. Their entire economy is at stake, and hopefully it would cause Mr. Vladimir Putin to stop and think a minute about some of his adventuresome antics around the world. And in addition, the pipeline represents not only the pipeline and everything that the distinguished senator has brought out, but really a symbol that says we're going to go ahead with all of our energy production. We're going to go all of the above here. This isn't either or with green projects or fossil fuels or whatever. So if you vote for the pipeline, you're voting for something that really affects our national security. Think about our exports to Europe. They're less dependent on Russia. And so Vladimir does not have his chokehold on them, if you will. And so I think there's a lot going on with regards to this issue that people haven't thought about. One other thing, the president told us at a meeting, meaning a group of Republicans 2 years ago, that he would make a decision between 2 or 3 months. And it was just a matter of tying down some legal matters. And now he says he's not for it, and obviously he will never be for it. You can make whatever conclusion you want about that, but it's not a good conclusion. I thank the senator.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank the senator from Kansas. And with that, we'll wrap up the colloquy. And I'd like to thank my colleagues, and we'll be back. And again, we're looking to work with all of our colleagues here on an open process to offer amendments and pass legislation that's important for the American people. Thank you, Mr. President. With that, I yield the floor.